Hey everybody, this is Perch, and hey, you know what's funny? It's when people who talk about being really hardcore comic fans say things on Twitter that are insane and prove that they don't read comics or pay attention to anything at all. Well, this week we have C2E2 over in Chicago. It's a comic convention. There are a lot of guests there, and one of those guests is Chris Claremont. Now, if you've met Chris Claremont, and I had a chance to talk to Chris Claremont for like a half an hour about a year ago in Puyallup, Washington, back when I lived in a place that wasn't 106 degrees all the time. One thing about Chris Claremont, anyone who knows comics and will tell you, is that Chris Claremont has a high degree of sarcasm, tends to have a sense of humor that is kind of bitingly cold and sometimes dry and or odd. He's also a very gifted writer. Regardless of what you think about comics, he did deliver some of the highest selling, most popular comics that have maintained their popularity to this day. And when you get him talking about things, he will frequently leave you wondering, is he crazy? Is he drunk? Or is he telling jokes? And the answer is he's telling jokes. So there's somebody was making a comment a couple weeks ago. One of the comic journalists on Bleeding Cool was talking about how they met Peter David and he seemed kind of grouchy. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yes, that's true. Anyway, so Chris Claremont was on this panel, and he Comics XF, which I might add at this point, does believe this channel is a all-out hate channel, disparaging against everyone, one of the worst places to possibly be. This was after I mentioned in a video that calling out Brett Booth, which they were doing at the time and refusing to review his comics, even though they were calling themselves X-Men authority, was childish and the very definition of toxic fandom. But if you criticize these people for their hypocritical, dumbass takes, then you are a hate channel. So welcome to this one. Anyway, Comics XF is covering this panel because it's an X-Men panel, and you can watch them kind of melt down in real time as they're doing it. First off, the panel was supposed to have Art Adams, was supposed to be on the panel as well. Claremont Adams on a panel would be pretty badass. But at any rate, Comics XF immediately decides to start throwing shade on the panel. Claremont is late. Again, paging anyone who has followed comics in the last 20 years. Yeah, he's going to be late. That's why, proper conventions will make sure that they kind of arrange it in such a way they can kind of escort him over there so they don't just, expect him to wander in on time. By the way, that applies to all kinds of people, from new creators like Donnie Cates or Tom King. I mean, Cates, it's a coin flip whether he's going to show up at all to some things. And no, before you say that's a mean take, there have been several conventions that he ducked out of at the last possible minute. And definitely some of those convention organizers kind of pissed. If you think that's throwing shade at Donnie Cates, take it up with some of the con organizers, most recently at the Dallas Comic Con, who were not amused. But anyway, so Comics XF immediately starts talking about people the host is asking if people have read anything Claremont that isn't X-Men, crickets, and then talking about Chris is late and this is hella uncomfortable. And then there's kind of more, where is he? Oh my God. This goes on for like 20 minutes or so. And then Chris Claremont comes, and then Chris Claremont does Chris Claremont things. This is, so here's some of the kind of highlights that you will be hearing about already, because what I'm about to tell you, if you go all over Twitter, people are absolutely ready to cancel him and send him out of comics forever for the comments he's about to give, which are in some cases some of the same jokes he's been telling for 20 years. But it turns out people do not pay attention. What I was kind of surprised by is, shitster comic tropes, who really, whatever. But he's like, ooh, he's saying a lot of very problematic things. His appearance seems to be going poorly. I've got to parse, what's going on here. So he's saying very inflammatory things. Again, nothing reveals that comic tropes is a phony than coming on and saying Chris Claremont is saying phony things or inflammatory things based on what he's saying, because this is Chris Claremont, dummy. This is the kind of stuff he says. Now, you could say it's inflammatory or not, but if you're going, oh my God, I can't believe what was said here, you clearly have not been following this guy. So don't call yourself a comic authority on anything. Sorry, it has to be said. Anyway, here's the kind of stuff he talked about. He called, this is kind of the highlights of the anger. He called Karma's arc the ultimate weight loss program, Enchanted Evil Flesh. This is when Magma was being, and talked about her being just kind of dumb. This was during the Asgard War, a two-parter that he did with Art Adams. He said they wanted to do a sequel to the X-Men Alpha Flight whole thing, and there wasn't room in the publishing line, which makes me die slightly inside. Doug found out it's not good to be a slave in Asgard. This is being interpreted that he's advocating for slavery other places. Anyway, he talked about how his Marvel contract keeps him from doing work elsewhere, and then compared himself to Congress. And then started bragging about his sales, which for whatever reason people are upset about. Now, I thought this was a comic industry where everything was wonderful and perfect, and it's bigger than ever. So Claremont talking about how he outsold Thor 3-1 back in the day seems in line. But again, this also seemed to irritate people. He said he hates Jean Grey's design that Jim Lee did, and for that, thank you. At least somebody's finally saying it. You notice Jim Lee is a great costume designer. I think he's done plenty of good work. Jean Grey's costume, I understand there's fans of the cartoon that still love that thing, but that was always, to me, hideous. But anyway, love a lot of these other stuff. Then this is where it seems to go into, again, if you know Claremont, if you've ever been on a panel or heard Claremont, this is all very routine Claremont. So you can decide it's good or it's bad. But you cannot say, hey, this is suddenly outrageous. Because if you are saying that, you clearly haven't been paying attention. If you're a fan, it's fine. But if you're a comic, quote unquote, journalist, that's not okay. You lose your cred. So anyway, he talked about how he didn't like Thor Love and Thunder, the movie. Said Tessa Thompson should go make another Persons in Black. This is racism, apparently. And then he kind of went off on how much he hates the current Krakoa X-Men series and everything that has to do with it, which of course, I'm sorry, but okay, regardless whether you like the Krakoa comics or you don't, hey, you're asking the guy who wrote X-Men for, several decades, if he likes the current completely different direction that bears no resemblance to what he wrote when he was on the title. What do you think he's going to say? Oh yeah, this is amazing. Well, of course not. So he doesn't like it. Seems confused. Somebody asked him, how he felt about Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, being named the first mutant in the MCU. And his answer was, what the fuck? Which, again, I mean, no lies detected. He wouldn't talk about John Byrne. He kept referring to him as the Canadian. And then kind of when asked if he'd ever work with him again, seemed to, the two are not friends. He frequently wandered off to various other topics. He likes talking about Roman and Greek history. He did a little bit of that here. He does this again. He's done this many places. He called X-Men Forever stupid. When talked about the creation of Gambit, said he never heard the name Remy, and basically where he got it. The fan says, they never heard the name Remy. Where'd you come up from, Gambit? And he said basically spent like a week in New Orleans, and that's where he came up to it. For some reason, all these comments are super racist. Okay. But then he kind of went into some other things. He said Gambit was originally meant to seduce Kitty and lead her to destruction. Says depressing that Gambit was a good guy. Doesn't know why he dates Rogue. I'm only the creator, he said. And then, and this is the line that's getting shared out a lot, like retweeted 172 times. And this is pure horror in Twitter land. He says he can get away with being, quote, another white guy playing fast and loose with racial identity because I'm British and we've been doing this for 1,000 years. He then said he would turn Kitty Pryde into the cosmic daughter of T'Challa and Storm thanks to the Panther God, and then turn Kitty black. Now, again, I want to pause here for a second. Whether you think this is cool or not cool, this is clearly a joke. He is clearly joking. The legitimate, quote-unquote, comic journalists who are saying this is a man having a mental breakdown, he is super racist, yikes, one of the worst things in the world. I hope that he goes to hell. What an awful racist person. Again, that is I don't know. Anyway, he goes on saying and kind of did a Cajun accent, and then said that Kitty would have to decide if she stayed black or went back to being white. He kind of wandered around for a bunch of things. And then he talked about how much the Eternals movie sucked and hoped that they weren't going to ruin the Marvels. As you may or may not know, Chris Claremont has a very fondness in his heart for Carol Danvers. Isn't the biggest fan. He didn't, I think, mention it in this panel, but previously he's talked about not liking the current Captain Marvel arc, and certainly is not a big fan of the current state of Carol Danvers. Which, again, why would he be? He wrote her in a very specific way, and they're writing her completely different now. I think, is he going to complain about the completely different take on the character that he liked and wrote a very specific way? I mean, yeah. What do you expect? Again, this isn't about good or bad. It's like, how is this surprising? At any rate, so he's he then went back to bitch about the Dark Phoenix movie. Talked about how much he's again hated Eternals several times, which again, absolutely. Wasn't a big fan of Multiverse of Madness. Talked about how fat Russell Crowe has become, and and then topped it off with, "Fuck him if Michelle Yeoh doesn't get a Best Actress nod for Everything Everywhere All at Once." And I mean, in that, I'm with her. That was an awesome movie. It's one of the best movies of the year. Anyway, he kind of continued to go off. He called the original X-Men 4 white guys and Marvel Girl. And then, he pitched a concept to Marvel where the Brood Queen was transformed into a human hero, said there was drama because she eats people, and that the Brood Queen could enter heaven. Marvel rejected that pitch. Anyway, he's just not a fan of bringing Thunderbird back to life. They can't do a good story. And then topped it all off saying, in 5 years, Krakoa and Araku won't exist, and this will all be over in a memory. He calls Marvel today like 1960 to 70 DC. That is not a compliment. At any rate, he that's where he at. Then he at the end said, "Hey, most of this is my ego talking." Again, another comment that he's made many times. This is his bit. He goes on to these panels. He doesn't take it seriously. He has that very dry kind of British humor that sometimes isn't funny, and he does this. So it is absolutely comical watching people lose their fucking minds over this. And Chris Claremont is 100% racist and canceled now. But anyway, there you go. So, big oof. Everybody mad. It is absolutely hilarious to see people who claim to be big time X-Men fans reveal that they really came onto the book and started paying attention around the time that Joss Whedon was writing it. Which again, it's fine, but don't pretend otherwise. Anyway, that's the background. You are absolutely going to see a number of articles posted over the next couple weeks about racist, old man, crazy, lunatic Chris Claremont and how he should be banned from comics forever. Several fairly big name journalists, YouTubers are already running with that narrative. So way to go. Certainly we don't want to spoil the current Krakoa era, which is selling an average of 40,000 copies on a good day. Of that series, and their trade collections are being dismissed to the dark, banished corners of Amazon when they come out. But yeah, let's keep this going. Anyway, hope you're having a good time. Thanks for listening.